I mean, the story of this piece is I wanted to, it's 11 meters wide, right? It's the biggest light piece I've made by a distance. It's double the normal size of a light work. I wanted to make something really big that was positive about migration. A big thing that made a positive statement about migration and migrants and what they can bring to countries and how important migration and education between cultures is, and celebrate that. So, you know, I also thought it might be a good time to celebrate Iranian poetry and culture and celebrate Iranian and Persian civilization instead of destroying it, you know. So I went to the work of Hafez Shirazi, who's a Persian poet from the 14th century. His dates are like 1350. But he wrote this incredibly wise, but somehow still modern poetry, aphoristic, a bit like Khalil Gibran, who was from the same place, Iran, but in the 1920s. So the first line of the poem is by Hafez Shirazi. So the part that says, even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Look what happens with a love like that. That's his. Okay. And that's as far as the line goes, so I gave myself the job of completing the poem really. So then I had, look what happens with love like that. A whole world blooms. It's the love they are forgetting. And by that I mean Trump and reform. That's what I mean, right? You know what I mean. It's the love they are forgetting. The love the sun gives down to the earth to be shared with every traveller, every migrant. Do not let them forget the love. And so it was, that's it.
There's so much. But I guess that kind of plays to the idea that people have had fear, or they perceived fear that's been kind of forced upon them about migrants, right? So I think there's like something really interesting about enlightening that, and then also with all the choirs and kind of the sound, the whole experience became kind of transcendental almost. It was amazing.
It was beautiful. I mean, that's Martyn's curation, you know, the combination of the building, the light work and the choirs, I see as a Martyn Reed piece in a way. Who is he? That mysterious guy from Leeds who's kind of a curator and an artist and a writer and a, how do you mind that column? He's hiding behind that column. See the guy in the back?
He's gonna hide
moving
out,
like that. That's Martyn Reed. So, you know, I think that's him making an installation piece from those components, and him working as a curator who's working as an artist, which is really interesting, and it is another layer of the last night's.
Have you ever worked in that way before, like with the sound and that, like kind of combining all those kind of mediums?
I'm sure I have, but I can't remember when. I mean, I certainly have worked in an abandoned swimming pool before.
Right.
I mean, people bring me in for that gig quite a lot.
I was going to say, that's a good genre.
I seem to get pulled in and invited.
Kind of pigeonholed
the
now.
first one of those I did was in 2012 in Berlin, in a place called Stadtbad Wedding, and they brought me in to celebrate the end of an era in Berlin, which was pretty much like a...
I'm trying to see if I have it. I actually don't know if I do.
I mean, it's a smaller pool. It says all palaces are temporary palaces. And it was a sort of commemoration of the era of Berlin artist squats ending, because Stadtbad had been an early artist squat. It had then become affordable studios with a music venue in the two swimming pools on the ground floor. And just as they invited me to do that, they were having the last party before it became like a Lidl or something. You know, it was wiped away. So that was a celebration, but also a bit of a elegy to the end of that wilder freedom in Berlin for artists.
You've been here before.
Yeah.
This mural obviously has been in the town since I believe 2017.
Yes, indeed.
So what is... I want to kind of get into the origins of you working in a public space with words, with poetry, and perhaps, you know, how that path began, because it's not necessarily the most natural path for somebody who is a painting student, as you were.
That's true. I mean, I tried to become like an expressionist painter, like I wanted to be Egon Schiele or something, or Otto Dix when I was 17. And then I went to Edinburgh College of Art, and I went to the college library, and I discovered like some poetry that really blew my mind. Like, I mean, I always loved poetry. Like at school, I loved Sylvia Plath, and I loved Philip Larkin and Ted Hughes, and then in art school, I started reading Andre Breton, whose T-shirt I'm wearing. I mean, he didn't make the T-shirt because he was 19th century Surrealist, but this guy, Andre Breton, you see this guy? So he's the guy who founded Surrealism, and I can put my finger on the day when my life was complicated. I went to the library, I picked up a book called The Random House Book of 20th Century French Poetry. It was a translation by Paul Auster of Breton's poem Free Union, La Union Libre. And the opening lines were, "My wife, whose hair is fire of the forest, whose thoughts are summer lightning, whose waist is the waist of an otter caught in the teeth of a tiger." And I was like, shit, man. That is, I need to do that. I want to do that too.
Right, and that's like you wouldn't be able to do a painting. Like
Sounds like I'm going to have to work out how to be a painter and a poet at the same time. And everything I've tried to do since or done since has been trying to answer that question of how to be a painter and a poet at the same time. And the one thing that occurred to me as a way to do that would be to take the idea of concrete poetry, which in its modern term is like loosely invented in 1908 by Guillaume Apollinaire when he writes a book called Al Cools. So concrete poetry means like the way the poem looks is part of its meaning. So on the page you did graphic shapes and movement, and words got big and words got small. And so the graphic form of the poem is integral to its meaning. So I thought, what if you take that principle and take that just off the page? I just try and do that like in the world. So literally concrete in the world, in space, and in urban space.
Right.
And so I just tried to consciously take the challenge of concrete poetry super literally, and just like go and make it as objects and billboards and wherever I could think of.
Was poetry something that you felt though was like taken away from you at a certain age? Like the possibility of it was not something that you could actually...
Not for me, but I
Okay.
think that's what happens with people.
Right.
I think people write poetry until they're 12 and then they get embarrassed or something about doing
Right.
it. I never felt embarrassed. I just always loved it. So basically, I had a great English teacher called Enoch Curry in my high school in Prestwick, and he would bring books to me and my one other friend, Donna McLean, who loved poetry, that were his own books, like Sylvia Plath and like, books that were a bit too like adult for the curriculum, probably when we were 12. And I read Sylvia Plath and I was like, wow, this is like how to live vividly. This sees the world so vividly. Like I wanna feel the world with this like vivid clarity or something. So
I this quote from Ursula Le Guin, I really liked it, and I thought it would kind of resonate with you. Words are events. They do things, change things. They transform both speaker and hearer. They feed energy back and forth and amplify it. They feed understanding or emotion back and forth and amplify it. And there's something about what you do in your practice that, especially when you see it in public space, usually words in public are telling you to do something, telling you not to do something, telling you when you can do something, or selling you something.
Yeah.
And rarely do words in public space let you think about yourself or let you think about place in a way that actually feels like it's your own.
Yeah. That's really important, and that's that's on an idea that's really important to me, which is about like the dominant types of speech in a society, like Roland Barthes would talk about a type of speech carrying an ideology, So a type of speech doesn't mean a language quite, but a way of speaking a language, an idiomatic way of a structural language that has a certain, power logic to it. And for sure in our culture, the dominant types of speech are the language of news media and the language of advertising. And those dominate both our cities and then laterally or laterally, recently have come to dominate digital space and our psyches by digital space in this really invasive way. And so, the language of news media and language of advertising, what do they share? Well, they both treat us just as material selves. You know, advertising treats us as a customer, consumer, and uses our paranoia to sell us things. The news media treats us as a sort of demographic, a voter, a constituent, but also kind of trades on our fears.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? What they don't do is they don't speak to like our hearts, or to the child inside of us, or to our sensitivity, or to our empathy for each other, or to our love and longing, or to our experience of grief and wonder, and all these things which I think in our culture previously were sort of a space that religion gave us a kind of a type of speech to express.
Yeah.
Many of us don't have religion as that type of speech any longer. And I think poetry became that for me, a place where I could try to reconcile the child inside of me with the exterior world. And I think that is poetry's essential therapeutic ability. You know.
Also, it seems like poetry is a way to get language back, because it feels like in so much of the technological revolution is to limit language as much as possible. There's only a certain amount of characters you can use for certain posts. The way that we scroll is like, you know, we're inundated with words so much now, but they've lost their meaning or lost the ability to be something more, or to be more more personal, it seems like.
Yeah, that's true. You can't get poetry wrong. You can make it as weird as you like. You get points for it being weird.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Which is great, because in many other, so much language is like manufactured and taught to us by rote, to say the right things, to get the right job, to do the right thing, to fit the right manners, to hit the right codes. Poetry, you can say anything in the weirdest way you like, and it can't be wrong.
But I like this, what you said, because this is a question you get often. Are you an artist, or are you a poet? Is it art, or is it poetry? What is it? And I think that's something that, you know, poetry kind of is one of those things where I think there's been a perception that if you say that you're a poet, people are like, well, what does that mean? But then, like, if you're an artist, people can kind of like put some sort of definition on it.
The answer is, I'm still confused as confused as I was that day in the library, and I don't think that confusion is bad, because I think if I stay confused, I'll do things I don't expect, and if I can work in the margins between the two media, that's interesting. I still think of myself as a painter who kind of wants to be a poet too. That's kind of it. I mean, nothing really changes. You know, my one mic stuck to my other mic. What do I do?
Oh, you stuck?
My hand mic stuck to my film mic. What do I do? Do I just put it? Will it blow up?
Hopefully not. We don't want you to
Is-
blow up.
Like, it's really. It's good. Basically, the.
You're just gonna keep going, aren't you? That was amazing. Okay.
So it did stick though. These were magnets. There's magnets in the book.
Yeah.
Basically, fine time. I don't know. I think of myself as a painter who wants to be a poet, you know, and like. It's funny, you get older, but some fundamental things don't change about your character, maybe, or your character as an artist. Like, I stumble along, I try to make like decisions that are truthful to my heart. I try to not compromise. I try to see like where I can make new things. I always try to bring painting and poetry together. I mean, I've done a whole bunch of paintings in the last 2 years, which are like figurative paintings of poets in cities, like poets I love, like Elizabeth Smart, like John Ashbery, like characters from the poetry world that I put in the cities they lived in, along with other people, writers and artists that they knew and didn't know. And I want to get the ghosts of poets in cities, and that's a completely other way of doing the thing of bringing painting and poetry together that I'm trying. And I'm just always trying to sort of run that rail of like where painting and poetry meet, and like see what I can find on the track.
How does like certain poems that you write get like what's the reception of them in different places? Have they created new meanings for you when they're placed in different locations or different cities or different kind of environments?
That's interesting. Well, I mean,
I'm just thinking about this particular one behind you.
I'll tell you an example. Recent example is that one I made in Berlin in 2012 for the end of that bad wedding, for the end of the squatting space in Berlin. And it said all palaces are temporary palaces. Like a new version of that in a different form was commissioned by the Robert Knox Museum in New York State for the beginning of the year. And I made it in gold, a bit like the letters on Trump buildings. And I put it in the museum's new building, and it says all palaces are temporary palaces, and that has a different meaning there, So, and that's it in the Cardiff Contemporary, in the middle of those two installations on the roof of an abandoned brutalist car park that was about to be destroyed. So that piece can change. I mean, I brought that piece back out for the Albert Knox, in answer to the moment, really.
Yeah. I feel like I studied modernist literature, but I do feel like poetry was sort of, I don't want to say like taken away from me, but it was definitely something as I was, like, as you mentioned, like when I was younger, it was almost like poetry's no longer, it's not really, like, let's focus on novels, let's focus,
Yeah.
What's kind of something that maybe for a young person or for anybody who wants to like start to do poetry again, or to like re-engage with it, like what are some like things that they can like, what is like kind of something that you have learned that is like the key?
Oh, it's great. I'll give you the whole recipe.
Let's get
you
it.
Get 3 friends, go to a cafe, let's say you and 2 friends, or even 1 friend, even just you, right? You get like 5, 6 poetry books that you like, go to a cafe or a bar, you read them, you talk.
We're jumping around right now, but okay, so cafe,
you
bar.
all go home. Yeah, I mean, if you want to get drunk or you want to drink coffee, I mean, you might be 16, you can't go in a bar.
Right, okay.
Not after 8.
Do you know 16-year-olds on coffee is kind of a...
Not unless you're eating a meal with an adult over 18.
Right.
It's like a complex thing. Anyway, so basically you read some poetry you like.
Yeah.
You go home, you write some poetry that you wrote. You get like 40 pages of that. Yeah. You take it to like a copy shop. You print that out 10 times. You got 10 books. You're a published poet. You got 10 books. You think of a name for the poetry press between the 3 of you. Like think of a band name. So it's like Granite Seagull Press. And then you publish the Granite Seagull Press book that you all wrote that last week. The following Thursday, you have a Granite Seagull poetry night where you read it. You've gone in 2 weeks. You've got a poetry press, you've got a poetry scene, and the 3 of you are like published poets, man. You fucking made it. You just do it yourself.
Actually, okay, so, but...
Like punk rockers, you do it yourself. You don't wait for your teachers, your professors, publishers, or agents. You do it yourself. It's just words on the page. You can't get it wrong. Make it as weird as you like. It will always be right.
Do you do this when you've hit a block? Like, do you have a method, like when you're like, you're not, it's like something you need to like sort out? Do you go, all right, I'm going to the bar, I'm going to the cafe, and you repeat this process that you would give to other people?
Yeah, I mean, Greta and I do it. My wife and I write together kind of
Okay.
a lot. and we just try and like lose our inhibitions by doing it like on the same page. The night we met, we did that. That's how I tried to get her back to my flat. There's always some, it's like
I wish she was here right now.
Yeah, she's at home with her baby, but at the hotel with her baby. But it's like I think that we were introduced because we were both writing poetry in different little scenes, and when we met, and she's like a real poet, right? So I'm like an artist who like does a bit of poetry. She is like, she has a super high level talent for poetry, like big poetry, and watching her write is like, if I'm like a sort of like a hard-working, like centre half in the football team, she's like like Ryan Giggs or George Best. She has like just natural talent, doesn't have to try. So writing with her is really good for me because I can steal phrases and stuff and put it on billboards.
By the way, that's good in front of an art crowd. You're doing a football metaphor. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll hit
I mean,
hard.
it's hard. I don't know what else. I mean, what else is universal? I don't know what's universal. Anyway, but basically, that is something that Greta and I kind of do as a way of like loosening up both of our minds in terms of how we write. And I think it's a really good thing to do because, but for younger poets, because musicians don't work on their own the whole time in a room worrying about what it means. They get together with their friends, they kind of jam it out, and they come up with a song kind of, you know?
Yeah.
And it never seemed to me to make any sense why poetry was always done alone. I thought it could be collaborative, like music. And I had that theory that, you know, I mean, if you take rock and roll as the other thing, like, you know, we know the Rolling Stones are better when they're together. We know that Keith Richards' solo stuff and Mick Jagger's solo stuff is kind of a bit shit.
Yeah, it's not good.
But together something happens, right? So it's like, why shouldn't that be the case with poetry? And there's only a few examples of collaborative poetry. Andre Breton was really into it. He did a bit with René Clair and Paul Eloy called Relente Travaux in 1923 or something, which is a book that I recently got a first edition of, which is amazing. And I think for me, this surrealist approach to collapsing poetry into this wider art practice, so it would become collaborative, it would become automatic writing, it would become migrate into painting sometimes, and the surrealists did have this idea of being painters and poets at the same time, which is why I think they are kind of a touchstone for me repeatedly. I go back to them as a way to restructure those separations between media.
You're a Scottish man,
Mm-hmm.
which I grew up with a Scottish grandmother, and she had Byrne, Walter Scott books. You know, there was like, we had poetry was kind of a thing that, you know, she like loved it.
Yeah.
I was wondering, you know, because then the other sides of my family, poetry wasn't really a thing at all, but for her it was so important. Why do you think the Scottish have such a great legacy of poetry? Like, what is something that maybe you have noticed or identified? I mean, it's something that you just think
I think
is...
it's very interesting. I think Robert Burns, I mean, I grew up a mile from Robert Burns' house, and he felt like my local poet, you know. We used to read it at school. It was a contest. We all learned it by heart and read it. And he's an amazing guy because he was like 1840s and a working class, like poor farm labourer who rose to the echelons of British literature through just like raw talent or something. But he really bust into a scene at the time that was an absolutely like upper class scene. Like they weren't really working class writers. I mean, Lord Byron was not a working class guy, nor Shelley, nor Keats, you know what I mean? So he was an incredible kind of revolutionary in terms of getting a working class voice into print in that time. So I think we hold him to our hearts partly because of that too, you know. But then I think that also he outshines a lot of stuff, and he becomes slightly like shortbread tins and little wee tartan cashmere shops and that kind of thing, the wee Scottish tartan shop, cobble shop thing. You know, like when they say wee Scottish tartan shop 5 times or something. And we know we're in Scotland, we can see it's a tartan shop. We don't say wee Scottish tartan shop down a wee lane. It's got Robert Burns on the window and we sell wee like shawls and stuff, tartan ones.
I did ask you if your Scottish accent picks up a lot more when you come back, and there you go. It is happening.
So that takes over his legacy a little bit, and we can't really see him through that, all that tartan all the time, you know. And so there's a lot of great Scottish writers. I mean, there's Paul Reekie. I'm doing a painting at the minute with a poet called Paul Reekie, who's an Edinburgh poet from when I was a kid in Edinburgh, at the Art College in Edinburgh, and wrote this poem called The Caesar's Mushroom. Like, when the Caesar's mushroom is in season, it is the reversal of the mushroom season, equinoxial, eternal to vernal, about a mushroom that blooms in spring, basically. And it's the greatest last line, it says, wipe your tapes with lightning. And he was like a great Scottish lost 90s Edinburgh poet that I'm putting in a painting because I want to like read his poetry at my next show in Edinburgh, you know, and like kind of exhume his work a little bit.
There's something that, you know, we're at a street art festival, and you have said to me in the past that you do feel a kinship with street art and the energy of street art.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't necessarily call yourself a street artist, but there's something about the spirit of it that you identify with. Like, maybe you could, since we are at a traditionally street art festival, maybe you could kind of touch on
I mean, I've always thought of myself as a street artist. I didn't ever see a separation between street art and art that would be indoors. I couldn't really
But you didn't like ever say like, you didn't actually ever declare I am a street artist, because there's so many different practices you were doing, but the public space is where you felt most thrilled with where your work was ending up.
I mean, look, I definitely, like, I moved back, I did my MFA in Edinburgh College of Art. I went to Houston in 95 or 96 or something to become a core artist in residence at the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston. And this really privileged, amazing gig to get, and it was such a wonderful thing. I had a studio in the museum, and they would bring like the great American artists of their time to give me crits and sit with me about my work. So I had like Rauschenberg and James Turrell and Ronnie Horn and Jack Pearson, all these artists that I really admire, come to my studio and talk about my work and stuff. And that was amazing, you know, and like
What did Turrell say? You say put some more light on it?
well, I just ripped off Turrell after he left. I was like, I'm gonna get some lights on this shit now. No. James Turrell actually was, I mean, that is, I did start working with light after he came to visit me, because he stayed with me for a long time, and he was a really nice man, and he had the feeling of kind of being a holy man, you know, and he reminded me of like my mum's friend Ian Curry, who was a minister, who when I was a kid I would hang out with him and feel like I was in the presence of a holy man.
I was going to say it was the money with James Turrell, but okay, no, it's the...
No. I mean, Ian Curry had a big long wheat beard, and he was just like, he was like a Church of Scotland minister, and like the kindest, gentlest man you could ever meet. And when we hung out with him, I would get this like fuzzy feeling of being with a holy man when I was 11, 12. And James Shaw gave me the same sort of vibe, and he was a Quaker. We talked about Quakerism. He said he used to fly conscious objectors in his little airplane from America across the Canadian border during the Vietnam War, which sounded like was that true? I was like, is that true? You're like a holy man? Would you do that? You know, like, and then, but I mean, I guess it was true. And then after meeting him, I really understood his work, that the transcendent nature of his work, and like he was looking for this kind of like transcendent space in pure light, like a kind of sort of cancelling space with light in a way, and making a palpable field of light you could almost feel like you could touch but you couldn't touch. So like a Rothko painting that you could almost walk into but then you couldn't touch. And I was like, what kind of lights do you use? Where do you get them? How do I get them? And he was like, these kind of LEDs, they pulse, they have a resonance, they have like a frequency. You get them from here.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'll get some of those. And so I did completely just copy that. But I mean, at least I asked him and copied it from him. I didn't copy it from like, you know.
Well, I mean, I think the reason why I wanted to know about Turrell, just in general about the certain kind of visual artists who make images versus what you do with text. And like, I know there might be a topic tomorrow night at the Fight Club. I don't want to spoil it, but about the idea of image versus text.
Yeah.
and like what you can do with text that can almost create an image to people, and vice versa, and that experience that you.
Yeah.
And that's why I was just asking about what other artists
I
would.
realized something about this that's changing, right? The image versus text thing is changing, and part of the reason I've just gone back to make figurative paintings that have like figures in them, faces in them, and portraits in them with text on the canvas, is because I realized the whole medium of moving image has changed fundamentally for especially younger people. Like now people watch films with subtitles because they do it on their phones and they're on a bus and the subtitles there and they read it and watch it at the same time on social media. And apparently the stats of people watching like at home TV movies with subtitles is like, that's really increased. So I think the two things are collapsing a little bit in popular culture. Image and text together, and the way they work together has blended in a way that wouldn't have been the case like 20 years ago, and that's because of an unexpected effect of digital culture. So, I mean, for me, when I make the artwork for the text pieces, I try to look at them as images, to check the work as an image before I print it or build it.
Great.
So you try to make sure it's like pleasing graphically. So there's a pictorial element as much as there is to an image with no words in it, I think. But I just naturally needed to have both things. I feel, I don't know, I couldn't. Because pictures can be so easily misinterpreted.
Yeah, right.
You know?
There's a quote that Martyn sent this to us when he wanted us to discuss probably more poetry in this talk than we're doing. But all beautiful poetry is an act of resistance, and I think a lot of what you're doing with poetry is encouraging and developing empathy for others, and trying to place that in places where people are maybe not necessarily always getting that experience.
Yeah, because people are kind, right? Because the reality of the world and our country and every other country is that 98% of people are super kind. They want to share, they want to help each other, they want to live in communities where people help each other. They're warm and welcoming, and they have like really kind hearts. The media is full of noisy people who want to take our resources and not pay their taxes, who want to turn us against each other and make us suspicious of each other. And I think that, again, that's Trump and Farage, just in case you don't know what I mean. And I think they're a minority, massive, huge minority in our countries and cultures, but they're a very noisy minority. And you know, saying shocking, offensive things makes headlines, but I think we should have more billboards and big signs that express love and kindness and welcome and you know.
And poetry is it's an act of defiance towards capitalism when it's placed in certain places as well, right? It's generally not something that can be sold.
Yeah, I mean, when I started doing poems on billboards, I was like, you know, our cities are so. I mean, this is a whole other layer now because our digital space is the invisible city that we don't see but lives in our heads. So dominated by advertising images, we're bombarded with that so much, and we know that industry used our attacked our self-worth to sell a shampoo, you know, since the 80s, and has done much worse since. And so just taking the McDonald's ad down is an act of resistance, but putting a poem on top of it is a generous act of resistance.
I want to open up, obviously, for the rest of the audience to ask questions, but I want to end on this. Bell Hooks, obviously a wonderful writer, poet, all sorts of a great thinker, passed away recently. Public art can be a vehicle for sharing of life-affirming thoughts, and I think that's a great way to contextualize and talk about what you do. And I think it's something that would be nice for people to take back from this whole entire week at Nuart. But it would be nice to have people be able to ask questions. Are we at the right time for that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There's no wrong time. Right, you're just going to have to wave because I'm quite blind. Oh, you're right at the back there. Okay. Alrighty, house lights are cruel. Okay, you have a question.
My question is, your big wall that was in Aberdeen in 2017.
Yes.
What does the last line mean? I've been thinking about this
Oh, when it
for
is
a long
big,
time.
when it is big gushed.
Yeah, what's
it's
that
like
about?
when you stand. It's like when it's May in Scotland, and the sky is blue, and it's and there's big clouds, the big puffy ones, and they're moving quite fast, and you're like, my God, spring's here. It's going to be summer. It's Scotland, but there's so much oxygen in the sky, and the sun's hitting that cloud, and I feel so alive. I feel like a bird, like when the sky's big gushed with that. You know what I mean? So I wanted, yeah, that's what that means. I mean, the beginning of that is about like what modernism means, right? So that's what we forget, is that modernism was actually a social project of equality to try and distribute access to education and healthcare fairly in Britain across like class and race lines, so everyone would have access to the NHS, which was only invented in 1947. Everyone would have access to universities freely, which was the case from like 1962 to 1990. You could go to university no matter what background you came from. You all got grants. No one got in debt. It was like a fair system of inclusion. That was modernism, right? As a project in Britain, and we kind of totally forgot that, and we were like, modernism. Well, yeah, that's like Bauhaus furniture or like IKEA furniture or something. No, it's not that. It's like, it is that equality of access across class and racial barriers for everyone to be educated and have free healthcare. That's what modernism is, and it was kind of there, and we didn't know how good it was when we had it, and now it's kind of diminished, and we have to kind of bring that back.
So I just wanted to say something first, and then a question. So I'm a refugee, and when I went into the baths yesterday, and I saw and I read the quote, and I think with the combination of the choir, it just made me feel very peaceful and like protected. Like, you know, it was like keeping all the fear out and all the fear mongering and all the news about how we steal money and steal jobs, and you know. So I really enjoyed it. It was like a
Thank you. That's really
meditation for me.
Thank you. Well, that's like my hope for the piece answered. Then it's done its job.
Yeah, it definitely did, and I hope other people felt the same. But I was wondering, did you have the location first, or did you have the text ready to go first?
Well, Martyn had the location and sent me it. Who's the curator of Nuart, the founder of Nuart, and so. No, then I came up with the text for the place, but I came up with the text kind of for the moment, because I agree with you. I mean, I want to kind of like argue back with a message of like hope and love and welcome against that horrible message that those misguided people are like amplifying, you know? And so I wanted to... so basically, the size of it was dictated by the space in a way. I wanted to make it as so it's made to fit in the pool, and then I love that Hafez Shirazi line, and I thought it was a good time to recognise that Iran is a country of poets and has an incredible literary tradition that we often are blind to in Western culture, because we're very Anglophone in how we understand literature. And so I did reading around contemporary Iranian poetry too, which was amazing to educate myself on Iranian poets that I hadn't read, and I thought I might incorporate a line or two from them, but then I came back to the Hafez because it just seems so like timeless, and seems to express so well that we are like, as human beings, like we're like one thing on one planet, and we have this like, you know, the life energy we're given is like from the sun, and it is to be shared, and it's magic to be here together, and I just wanted to. So I couldn't find a better way of saying it than Hafez Shirazi had said in like, I think he wrote that poem in the 1380s, which is crazy, it's so long ago. And you know, yeah, so I mean, yeah, thank you so much for that response, because that makes me really, really pleased.
Thank you.
I think that is a perfect place to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Robert and Evan and audience, for beautiful questions. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.